Hey, everybody. Mark and I have over 20 years of experience as therapists and as addicts in long-term successful recovery. We know better than anyone what works and what doesn't to break out of porn and sex addiction, heal betrayal trauma, and reclaim your relationship.
And we've poured all of our personal and professional recovery and healing experience into a first-of-its-kind program for addicts, spouses, and couples. We call it Dare to Connect.
At least 4 times every week, we engage with you in real time, in the trenches, giving you the knowledge and the tools to take back your life and relationship.
Whatever else you've done on your journey for healing and recovery, you've never done anything like this.
Mark and I, we've made all the mistakes, so you don't have to. Don't reinvent the wheel.
We all know tomorrow never comes. Look, don't wait one more day to change. Claim your free 2-week trial today at daretoconnectnow.com.
Hey, everybody. I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSE Squared podcast.
Hey, all you PBSE listeners, this is Mark and Steve. We are on episode 230. And this one, boy, I don't know. We've had a number of podcasts kind of in a row, Steve, where we say at the beginning, boy, this one really got our passion going.
I think that's like been the last half dozen.
I know. We're just really passionate about this stuff. We're passionate about this stuff for all your partners. We're passionate about it for all you addicts in recovery or thinking of getting into recovery. We're just passionate. And this one's going to be no different. So this submission came in from a partner. And boy, oh boy, did this really sparked something in both Steve and me. Because we've been through this. We've been through this from the addict standpoint. We've seen our partners go through it. And we both had some real evolution of thinking, evolution of attitude, maturing to do in how we approach this personally in our marriages. And so let me read what this partner sent in. She says, over the course of our 25-year-long marriage, my husband has had 2 emotional affairs, a decade-and-a-half-long porn addiction, and a 2-year-long physical and emotional affair with a coworker. I was completely blindsided. No inklings or gut feelings even about any of this. It has been brutal, but we're working hard to heal. He has been in honest recovery for a little over a year. He has been through 12 steps, the 12-step program, and worked with our ecclesiastical leader. Both have encouraged some form of restitution. So I'm assuming that the ecclesiastical leader, the 12-step program, encouraging him to get into restitution to her. Obviously, he can't unsee all the porn and undo all the selfish, hurtful things that he did and said to me. I've asked him what restitution looks like or means for him. He said it was to try and become his best, highest self that God intends him to be, living wholeheartedly and trying to not cause any more suffering in the world. Now, here comes her questions. She asks, is that restitution? Is working on yourself to be a better human and husband the same as making restitution? It seems like that is what he should have been doing independent of me all along. If that isn't restitution that he and the others are describing, then what is? How do you make restitution for serious betrayals? Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy.
I'll just full disclosure. We produced this and I had to amp down. a little
Yeah.
bit because I got pretty fired up.
Yeah, we had to wait for Steve to
about this.
calm button down a bit.
I've kind of mentally taken a step back and I'm just kind of looking at it because I think it just brings up a lot of feelings of I know there's a lot of connection to the addict in that perspective. There's a lot of connection to the partner about the unfairness of that. And we are definitely going to talk about this today through a lens of accountability. And I am gonna validate this in a way that I didn't even tell Mark that I was going to. I do think that an ongoing, if it's done the right way, an ongoing commitment to change, if it includes commitments surrounding the betrayal. So, for example, increased check-ins, increased accountability, taking other measures to provide safety around the damage that is done. I do think that that is part, emphasis on part of a restitution. I would absolutely agree, though, and I think Mark and I both agree that when the spouse says, shouldn't he have been working on this and being quote unquote the best human he can be all along? Absolutely.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
could take a book. You could, I'll bet if we were to have an opportunity to sit with her and ask her some questions, I'll bet if I said, did you expect when he was courting you and dating you and putting on the really impressive show for you and really trying to get you to agree to marry him, were you assuming that he was going to, at that time and going forward, going to try to be the best man that he could, the best version of himself that he could, or that God intended him to be, and to live wholeheartedly and to try to not cause suffering in the world? Were you assuming all those things when you guys were getting started? What do you think her response would be?
Yeah, definitely not the case.
She was assuming those things.
Well, she was assuming those things,
Yeah,
yes, but yeah,
because he's saying restitution is now me doing those things.
Correct. Well, it's me getting back to my original commitments.
Yeah, and she says, "Well, shouldn't he have been doing those things all along, like
Absolutely.
independent of me?" Well, that's true. Now we don't, and I want to be careful because we don't want to say to addicts, "Well, you know what, you're hosed because I don't care how good a man you try to become, you'll never be able to make restitution." We're not saying that. We're just saying that is part of restitution, but there's a good deal more to it than just that.
Absolutely. That is the way we talked about it before here is that what guys often think of as restitution when they're in this mindset is really the picture that little checkered starting line, right? With the guy with the flag in a big car race, right? Like the Indy 500. That's the starting point. A spouse
everything we just said is the starting point, because what are we doing, guys? We're trying to get back to what she thought we meant and what we promised and what she assumed was happening. We're trying to actually get back to the starting gate in the relationship.
Correct.
Yeah. And that is part of restitution, but just remember, that's just getting back to the starting line that she thought she had in the first place.
That's not actually fixing or undoing the damage. I had a spouse who put this really well. She had an increased capacity for bluntness and a decreased capacity for tact. We'll put it that way. One day we were talking about this in my office years ago. But the way she said it, even though it was pretty blunt, it was absolutely right. She said, he is looking at me like he's better now and he's not acting out anymore. And he's looking at me like I should just be so proud and happy and just perfect. And he was sitting right next to her, not making eye contact with you. And she said, I seriously feel like he wants a freaking medal for doing what he promised me he'd do 25 years ago.
Oh my gosh. How many times? I was guilty of that too. Well, I'm recovery now. I'm not looking at naked people anymore. Right. I'm starting to pay attention to you and actually communicate with you and be transparent. And wow, you should be thrilled. How come you're not running around patting me on the back and giving me gold stars on my forehead?
Yeah. Well, so sometimes we look at that and we say, well, see, now it's better, or we say, see, this is restitution. And we need to be clear about something else here too, because we know that a lot of you hail from different spiritual frameworks, different religious frameworks. This coupleship does. They reference an ecclesiastical leader in this process. And we are very well acquainted with some of the cultural misnomers that sometimes accompany a religious framework around concepts like apology versus amends versus
Yeah.
restitution,
Yeah.
right? Apologies and making amends are not the same thing.
They're not at all.
And this guy has been in 12 step for over a year, so he should know this by now. But making an apology is a beginning state. Making an amends is restitution. Those processes are separate. One is technically involved with the other, but again, it's just a starting point. I'm sorry, I'm going to change. But the restitution piece, probably what we need to do is just jump into our list. Okay, let's talk about what restitution actually is.
Well, can I say something before
Please.
we launch into that? I also,
Please.
because I know if I were an addict in recovery or thinking about getting into recovery, I'd be pretty resistant to all of this right now. Man, these guys are hammering on me big time. Guys, this guy who is been in 12 step and trying to do all the right things and working recovery, we applaud him. Because for every one of these guys who's trying to become a better man and be what he promised her in the beginning that he was, and now he's trying to do that, for every one of these guys trying to do that amount of restitution, there's another 100 guys who basically say, screw all you, I'm just going to do whatever I want. And they never get on the recovery path. So we applaud all of you who are listening and who are even taking these first initial steps. We applaud you. We're proud of you. We like, hurrah. All we're saying is now that you're on the track and the path, now we want to introduce you to the more of it. Don't stop there. Don't stop that. Well, I'm back to where she thought I was when I proposed to her. We're back to there 25 years later. That should be good enough.
Yeah.
Good for you for having enough humility and desire to get back to that starting place. All we're saying is now continue forward.
Well, and there is a great deal more to do. I mean, there's a lot, right? We're gonna talk straight here for a minute. So, I mean, I'm going to talk for just a second about what restitution it is, and then we're going to give an example of why it is this, because it's going to make a lot more sense, I think, if we give an example.
Yeah.
So first of all, restitution is a demonstration of contrition. Okay. That is, again, a part of an apology, but an apology technically in our world, and I'm not going to lie, this is a bit of a soapbox issue for me because I see this in a lot of conservative cultures and spiritual backgrounds, including the culture I hail from. And I'm sorry somehow makes things better. Yeah. And that is, I'm going to keep it clean today, nonsense.
I mean, it's a start.
Exactly. That's not change.
It just opens the door. Yeah.
A real demonstration of contrition is so much more than an I'm sorry. It's an in-depth deep dive and recognition into how you impacted that person.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to the painful depths of where they've been. It's practicing empathy in the most uncomfortable of ways, which is getting down in the dirt and looking at your own crap and the damage you caused and being accountable for it, because we did. Now, that doesn't mean there weren't reasons for it, and we talk about that in many other podcasts, but we're not here to talk about it today. We're here to talk about this. We caused it. Whatever the reasons were, whatever stuff set us up, plane crashes, cancer, dad's dying, abuse, trauma, whatever it is, doesn't matter. We are responsible for our actions. And it is important that we figure out and connect with how that has influenced our partner. Because one betrayal doesn't mitigate another. One hurt doesn't justify the perpetuation.
And a big part of restitution, everyone listening, was what was enormously hard for me and Steve, was leaning in and sitting with our partners in the pain that we caused.
Yeah.
And your shame wants to tell you to run away. I can't sit here with this. It's too intense. It's too hard. It's too shaming. It's too overwhelming. But part of restitution is doing our work and developing the skills to literally lean in and sit with my partner in the crap that I created.
Yeah. Well, and a part of that is recognizing what was taken, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to get into that in just a second. But a restitution, next bullet point here, is a full, as much as possible, because one of these we can't give back is time, but as full as much as possible of a restoration of what was I had taken written down in my notes. I replaced it with stolen.
Stolen. What did I steal from her and from us and from me?
Now, what did we take, may you ask? Well, let's go through the list.
Oh boy.
And this is going to be hard. Okay? So that's the last trigger warning we're going to give here, because you guys can handle it. Take a break from this if you need to. Come back. What would we steal? First of all, we stole innocence. We stole this person's innocence.
Yeah.
We stole this person's view of what could be and what should have been and what isn't going to be. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have an incredible, amazing marriage. Far from it. In fact, in many ways, we talk about this all the time on here. Marriages who successfully navigate this oftentimes come out the other end stronger for it. But stronger does not mean it will be the same thing of what that marriage that she committed to, of being betrayal free and not having fidelity question and all the other stuff we're going to talk about. That's never coming back. It's gone.
It's gone.
It's gone.
Right. We stole that.
We did.
We did.
Hope along with that, right? At least in the short term. Now, thankfully, that's something that can be restored on the list. But yeah, and definitely the short to medium to maybe even in some ways the long term, we definitely stole a lot of hope. Connection.
Yes.
Not only did we steal connection, when you look at this example, and many of us, including Mark and I, fall into this, we didn't just steal the connection, we stole it from our spouse and we gave it to someone else.
Yes. Even if the acting out was purely pornography, digital.
Yeah.
We
to a fantasy world.
Still took what we committed and promised to give to our partner, and we took it elsewhere, even if it was online with sitting in front of my computer.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Trust, right? Huge. I mean, we won't even get into that one, but we could do a whole podcast on that.
Massive.
And this is another hard one to hear. And this one, I won't lie, if I ever have to work on my shame these days with this topic, because it comes up on a rare occasion, it's this next one, time.
All the time that was lost.
Because that we will never be able to get back.
Yeah.
Right? How many spouses, Mark, over the years have we heard from a partner, you took the best years of my life from me?
Yeah. You took the best years of my life from me.
Too many times.
It's true.
Right? Commitment, their sense of commitment and being able to commit. I didn't even have that in the notes, but it's coming to mind right now. Do you know how much partners on the back end of this, guys, how much they struggle not just to receive commitment from others, but to make them in the future? How gun shy they find themselves, not just in other romantic relationships, in other relationships in general. The difficulty around that is hard to quantify. Oftentimes we think that it's limited somehow to our marriage or even to just like a romantic partnership. That is not the case.
No, we throw our partners into absolute chaos, their confidence. We steal their confidence. We steal their trusting their gut or intuition, because what do partners say? If he could have pulled the wool over my eyes for all those years or decades, who else has done that to me?
Anyone could do it.
Am I the dumbest person imaginable? Do I not notice anything? Am I just completely clueless in this world?
I slept with, made babies, made a family with this man for 30 years, and I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
No one's trustworthy.
It just shatters their confidence.
I can't trust anybody.
All of it. I know. They're just, yeah.
Right? Fidelity. It kind of ties into commitment, but it goes back to that sexual exclusivity component of a marriage, which 99.99% of marriages on planet Earth are founded on. Okay? Her entire essence, really, in many ways over the last, all of those things kind of make up that period of time. I'll tell you one that's really hard to talk about for me is just Brittany's vigor for life.
Her vigor for life, her enthusiasm, her
everything, that the light in her eyes, it went away.
Yeah,
for a long time.
Mine too.
She was there, but she wasn't there.
Yeah.
It's like somebody had snuffed something inside of her that I didn't know was snuffable.
I remember when we first got together, one of the things that attracted me, her unconquerable optimism, her loving and accepting of everyone around her, her non-judgment, her zest for life, her enthusiasm, right? Her bubbliness. And I saw over the years, she just became weighed down. Like she was carrying a huge burden that was just crushing her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk about some of the things that restitution is not. And this is where I'm going to give the example. Okay. First of all, restitution is not something that the addict determines. Now I'm not coming down on this guy, but I am speaking with force because this needs to be absolutely clear. And I hope every ecclesiastical leader on planet Earth is listening to this too. Restitution, again, is not something that the betrayer determines. We don't go to rapists and have them determine how to make it up to a victim. We don't go to betrayers and ask them, what a full recompense for the damage done would be. If I rob a bank, and Mark actually did a great expansion on this example because I originally had it one way, and so he's going to tell the second part. If I robbed a bank of $5,000 and I get caught or I turn myself in, how much sense would it make for me to say, you know what? I think I probably should give back about $2,000 of that, and that probably ought to do it.
Or
right?
what if
Or Mark's example is even better. Go ahead, man.
Bank robber says, I've really recognized the error of my ways. I'm turning my life around, and I'm going to now engage in lots and lots of community service, become a very active man in the community, and that will be my restitution to you, bank, for the $5,000 I stole.
Well, Lottie frickin' daw. Geez, I'm sure that's a big comfort to all of the people in the bank whose money's now gone. Do you guys see, when you look at an example through that lens, can we see why Steve and Mark are so passionate about this? The thinking there is so beyond flawed. To be honest with you, for many partners, taking that approach is a betrayal all of its own.
It is.
I mean, where in the world would we ever think that it would be okay to manage any other situation in that way? But somehow, some way, when it comes to betrayal, because it's not visible, because it's not tangible, because it's not something you can hold like cash or jewels or money, we somehow think that like the rules don't apply. We need to wake up.
And to be real with the addicts listening to this, much of this behavior, guys, was taught to you and me.
It absolutely was.
Nearly all the men around me that I grew up with took this same exact approach. They would do things to harm and betray and hurt, and then they would decide what was needed in order to make it right, and they would implement that and move on their way.
Yeah.
A lot of times the betrayed person wasn't really included that much, quite frankly.
No. I have seen that happen multiple times in religious circles, and you haven't picked up on it right up to this point. It pisses me off 6 ways to Sunday. It drives me nuts. Because it is so diminishing and so disrespectful of what a partner has been through.
So it
was and tarnishes their sacrifice and what they've endured.
But it was taught to us. So we're saying, okay, this is a better way. This is a much higher way that we're talking about today.
So next on the list, restitution is not, and we kind of already covered this, is not doing the things that you should have been doing all along. It's a starting point, but that's it.
Getting back to the starting gate.
So let's talk about what it is now. Okay, we've got 4 bullet points, and if you're still listening and you haven't yet burned a Steve voodoo doll in effigy somewhere, here are the 4 bullet points to take note of, guys. 1, proactively connecting with your partner and becoming fully present with them in that pain. It means going to the depths of them more than once, usually, and sitting there with them, being there with them, even though we can't change it, even though we can't fix it, even though it's terribly uncomfortable for us, even though it might bring up our shame. We do the work to learn how to manage the shame, to learn to manage the guilt, because that is our job.
Yep. We are in some cases, for the first time, we're actually going to start showing up.
Yes.
Knowing what that means.
Absolutely. Making and keeping commitments going forward. Our word becomes our bond going forward now. And this one I am exceptionally passionate about, as if I wasn't passionate enough about the other things on here right now. I'm on the cusp of going on a trip to Europe. I'm not going to lie. It is a royal pain in the ass to get ready for. I'm really excited for it, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But when my wife and I were dating and we got married, one of the bucket list things that I promised would happen in our marriage, there were 2 things that I recall perfectly besides my basic marital vows. One was we would get to a point where my wife would be able to work at least part-time so she could be home to spend time with kids. And finally, I've gotten to a point where I'm able to do that now. The second one is that I would take her to Europe because my wife is a huge travel bug. We have planned this trip 2 times before. I will be completely candid with you. I run 2 businesses, one of them with Mark. We have a podcast together. We continue to expand in every way possible. There are 100 reasons right now. My wife and I are expecting our first child. There are 100 reasons right now why going to Europe right now is a horrible idea. But if we don't do it now, it's going to be at least 12 years. And because I'm not going to Europe and taking my kids if they can't remember it. and I promised my wife this would happen. So unless God himself shows up and smacks that plane out of the air in the next 48 hours, my ass and my wife's ass will be in England, in London at Gatwick Airport, because that's what we committed to do. It's happening. Guys, when we make these promises, we have to fulfill them. God knows. And why am I so passionate about that, guys? It's not because I'm sitting here talking from my white tower telling you guys what to do. It's because I broke 50,000 of them to my wife.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so passionate about keeping the ones now, because I have got a list a mile long of broken promises, broken dreams, unfulfilled whatevers. We have to draw a line in the sand, and we have to make the commitment that if I'm going to restore trust, when I tell my spouse that something is going to happen, it is going to happen.
And very importantly, not just the big stuff, but the little stuff.
Absolutely.
The day-to-day commitments.
We did a podcast, what was it, Mark, 2-3 months ago, about the importance of taking out the trash.
Yeah.
Exactly what we're talking about right now.
Exactly. I don't have to be asked or hounded, or she's not the one keeping track all the time.
If you've got 6 work meetings that day, 2 of them with the CEO and 5 other things to take care of, but you promised your wife to take out the trash, guess where you're driving on your lunch break? The only time you have to yourself. You're driving your ass home and you're taking the trash out.
That's restitution, man. That's what restitution looks like.
Yes, you don't get a lunch break today. Because I said I would take that trash out before she got home, and I'm not going to make it home. So it's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean,
right?
And if honoring a bigger commitment, this has happened for me. It means that I might be eating bologna sandwiches for the next 2 years in order to save up the money to honor the commitment that I made to my wife.
Well, and that's going to come in the next part of restitution.
That's going to come in the next
creative and proactive piece. So we're getting there. Yes, absolutely.
Providing exclusivity is this third bullet. What does it mean to be exclusive? I promised that when I was courting my wife and asked her to marry me, that I would be exclusive, that we would be exclusive. I am now going to proactively look at all that means, and I'm going to learn how to do it and practice it.
I have a rockin' suit in my closet that I don't wear very often. It cost a lot of money. I hate paying for dry cleaning because I'm a cheap butt. And so I don't wear it a whole lot. When I think of this exclusivity piece, what I think of is whether it's mentally, emotionally, sexually. Exclusivity means that I show up for other people in my basketball shorts and t-shirt. In my marriage, I show up in my suit in those areas.
I like that analogy.
I show up with the best parts of me.
The best. I don't get the best parts to others. Those are for her first.
Yep.
Yeah. And the other one, this fourth bullet is huge. Pursuing your partner relentlessly. Day in, day out. What does it mean to pursue her? And we could do a whole series of podcasts on what it means to pursue a partner, but we invite you to look and talk about all the ways what that means. How does she want to be pursued? Have you even talked about that? And gotten from her side of things what that means to her, for you to pursue me, right? Relentlessly, consistently, persistently. Way. So
Absolutely.
Now, what does the actual in the trenches specific restitution look like? Following,
how does this work in real time?
How do you do it? And you see, you have a bullet here. You said creatively and proactively. In other words, not waiting for her to tell me, here's how I want you to give me restitution. It's like, no, I've thought a great deal about this. I bounced it off my support system. I've asked others what they've done. And sweetheart, I am coming to you with my proactive suggestion, plan, list of what I believe would restitution looks like. What do you think?
Yeah.
All right. That's the first part, creatively and proactively.
And you're going to do that with each of the following. And we have 4 more bullet points. Here we go. First of all, and this is definitely not the easiest on the list by any means. We inquire, meaning we get down and dirty in the pain with our partner. We don't just lean in terms of providing empathy. We do what seems like husband Harry Carey. We ask, what have I stolen from you? From your perspective,
oh, wow.
What have I taken?
What have I
How
said?
have I hurt you? How have I wounded you? And guys, the key there is that is her narrative. And I know that this sounds obvious, but sometimes it's interesting. We become so pain avoidant. We adopt what I'm going to say here in a second without even realizing it. Her pain is determined by her, not by you, not by your bishop, not by anybody else. I don't care who it is. Trauma has always been and will always be in the eye of the beholder, period.
Yeah.
So from her perspective, what have I taken? What damage has been done?
Yeah.
Okay. Number two.
Yeah. Once
Mark, you want to do number two?
Now it's communicating sincere, and listen to these words: sincere, complete apologies that include commitments for long-term change. Sincere, complete, and we're gonna invite you guys to do your homework on what that means. Sincere, complete apologies, including commitments for long-term change.
We'll give you a hint. Bullet point 1 is a catalyst for bullet point 2.
Yeah, what you've heard today. And then providing ongoing empathy where needed. This is not a one and done, guys. This is where my mind would have gone, oh dear God, I'm going to do all this. Okay, but let's get through it and get it done. Restitution. Whoo, box checked. Nope. This is ongoing empathy, ongoing leaning in, continuing to ask her, how have I hurt you? What can I do? This isn't just a one-time event. This is from now on. And I know that's hard to hear because my man mind wants to say, whoa, let's just get it done and then move on.
I already empathized with this last month. I don't need to empathize with this again. It's already been empathized with.
I actually knew a guy, his wife really wanted him to be more expressive with his expressions of love. And he literally said this, I'm not joking. Well, when we first got married, I told you I loved you. If anything would have changed, I would have let you know.
Oh, gosh. Oh, Steve's working the surrender process right now in the middle of the podcast recording. Oh, boy. Oh, guys, you can see how we do struggle. We try, but we struggle sometimes. So the ongoing, that's about all we can say about that. We got to wrap this up. Provide potential ideas for restitution. So we come up with ideas. Once we figured all that out, guys, it's not enough to just say, okay, well, you let me know what kind of bandages you want to. I remember when I go to the doctor as a kid, you want a Snoopy Band-Aid or a Power Ranger Band-Aid? Like, we don't do that in this case, right? What do? We come up with solutions and we say, here are some potential ideas for this. Now, let me give you, this is a good point to give an example of this has happened with two different guys that I've worked with over the years, and it ended up being around the same thing. I actually shared this once before in a podcast, but it's applicable now. So I worked with a couple once where a big part of the betrayal that had happened in their marriage is because of the way birthdays landed and things. Long story short, they, as a coupleship, had always spent the time of her birthday. She happened to have the same birthday. The wife, the partner, had the same birthday as his mom, so her mother-in-law. And every year, their whole marriage, they had basically gone and done mother-in-law's thing on her birthday every year for like 40 years. And when we were navigating this later on, and we were talking about all the sexual betrayal and everything else, one of the big points that brought up for her, she said, obviously this other stuff is hurtful, but I just feel so not chosen in so many other ways. And she brought this one up as a huge issue for her, and it made a lot of sense. Every year, her birthday was a pain point.
Yeah.
Because instead of it being a day where she could be celebrated, it was a reminder that she came second to something else, or someone else. So what did we do? Me and this guy, we got together and we said, well, what do we do to fix this? You can't give back 40 birthdays. Also, that had included taking trips and things like around those birthdays, right? They were always where the mother-in-law wanted to go or whatever. We came up with an idea. He happened to have the resources, but if he hadn't, he was gratefully in a great recovery place and he was willing to do whatever needed to make it happen. But we sat down and we said, why don't you come up with an idea? I said, I want you to put a globe in front of your wife or a map of the whole planet. And I want you to go to her. And I said, what would you think about you going to her and just say, spin that thing and point to a place on the map and I will get you there. Wherever you want to go. We are taking a trip. I will make it happen. You don't have to plan a thing. I will do the flights. I will do everything. I will get you there. And it will just be you and me and nobody else.
I love it.
And damn everybody else. And he proposed that to his wife. Now, the whole how that worked out is a story for another time, but that would be a great example of what we're talking about here, right?
Yeah,
Can he give her back 40 years? No.
No.
But can he give her the trip of her dreams that she always should have had? Yes, he can.
And it doesn't have to be big things if you don't have the resources to do it, but it's the whole idea is you coming up with the list, you making proactively the suggestions, and then how are you going to sacrifice to make it happen or make the changes, not her.
No, this is not this trip. If we use that as an example, we don't go to her and say, okay, hon, so here's the deal. Our trip budget usually is this. Why don't we use the trip budget this year to go in? No. Nope. Remember how we talked about bologna sandwiches earlier? We'll use another example. Guess that Starbucks mocha frappuccino whipped frappe, whatever it is you get every Wednesday, that $7 drink or whatever it is every 3 days a week. Guess you're bringing coffee in a mug for the next 2 years or whatever it is until you can make that trip happen.
I guess I'm going to take the next 6 months of every overtime opportunity.
I'm going to be bringing in PB&J a lot while the other guys are eating at Chili's every day during lunch. And right? So whatever it is.
As we finish up, what I think the really positive note of all this that we want you to really try to, and I know, man, I know guys, and I know you feel beat up after a podcast like this. We know. I mean, I've been beat up so many times, and you're just like, oh God, this was so hard. This was so crazy. But we're really hoping that what you're wanting to get to, guys, is getting to the place where restitution is in full swing and going forward, so that you can do what? So that we can really start to collaborate as a couple, share our ideas, right? Get feedback, make changes as necessary. We're a team. We go through this whole restoration process so that we can get back to the place where we've both always wanted to be, which is this sense of oneness, this sense of collaboration, of interdependence, and just how awesome that is. So keep in mind where this is taking you to progressively get to that place. Not her over there and me over here and me making restitution for the rest of our living days. No, you're looking to come together, to become one, to join together and collaborate and have this beautiful relationship. And this is getting you there.
Yeah. Keep
that in mind.
Well, guys, we've talked a lot today. We've gone way over time. I know we anticipated. Big shock. We love and appreciate all of you. If you like this kind of straight talk, if you find that it, even though maybe is uncomfortable, but resonates, if you feel like your marriage could benefit from an approach that is human, real, based in the recovery of two still very human dudes who are trying their best to help other people not reinvent the wheel on a variety of ever-growing topics with a variety and ever-growing library of pre-recorded on-demand content, come on over to Dare to Connect. There's a 2-week trial. You can pick up on that at daretoconnectnow.com. And to send us additional questions that you would like addressed on the podcast, you can send those, if you're feeling brave, to the PBSEpodcast.com. There's a contact form down at the bottom. And you can also do a search there for past podcasts as well. And we hope to see you next week.
All right. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Everything expressed on the PBSE podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.